Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our new panel organized under the framework of our Jean Monnet Chair, Security, Migration and Society in Europe. So this chair is continuing its activities since 2019. Well, okay, today we will talk with distinguished speakers on the new coalition government and how it will be influencing Turkey-German and Turkish-EU relations. As you all know, Germany has always been a driving force in Turkey relations. Since the first Turkey's application as an associate member to the EU. And in recent years, particularly, Chancellor Merkel played crucial roles to keep those relations on track because, as you know, she was among the few leaders that had some positive, at least not negative, relations with Erdogan. But she was also, of course, criticized time to time, at times, I mean, as sidelining the democratic backsliding and deteriorating human rights credentials of Turkey. So we have the end of Merkel era now with the building of this traffic light coalition government in Germany established between our Green Party, Greens, Social Democrats and Liberals. So as this traffic light coalition begins to govern Germany, we would like to discuss some implications of this new government on Turkey-EU relations and on Turkey-German relations. Okay, we have some distinguished speakers. By the way, I also need to state that as you have seen in the program, normally Dr. Sinem Adar was going to be with us, but due to some emergency reasons, today, unfortunately, we cannot host her. But we have Dr. Ilke Toyger with us, and she's analyst of European, affairs at Royal Institute in Spain, and also she is part of CATS network, of course, in SWP. So her research areas include European integration, EU institutions, political parties and elections, geopolitics of European transatlantic relations, and of course, Turkey's relations with the West. We have also Ebru Turhan here. Ebru Turhan is assistant professor at the Political Science and International Relations Department in Turkish-German University. She also serves as a senior research fellow at the Institute for European Politics in Berlin. She recently co-edited a book, an open access book actually, on Turkey-EU relations, and I really recommend that volume. Actually, we will have finally, I hope, Günter Seufert with us. He is, of course, the head of Center for Applied Turkish Studies, CATS, within the German Institute Security and International Relations Affairs, SWP, if I'm not wrong. Of course, he acted as senior researcher in different platforms, and he is quite experienced regarding Turkish foreign policy, the Cyprus conflict. He was for several years was based in Istanbul and serving as journalist to different European media outlets. Okay, maybe we can start with İlke Toygur. İlke, as you know, the new government is a coalition government, and it has been established actually through a sort of a coalition agreement. And we know that Greens and Social Democrats are the main parts of this coalition, and they they put emphasis on some issues such as human rights and democratic reforms that are often ignored by the Merkel government. I mean, what could be the implications of this new coalition government in Turkey's relations with Germany and possibly with the EU? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alper, for your kind words. We are as Center for Applied Turkish Studies, CATS, happy to contribute to this debate. So happy to replace my colleague Sidem today. I will shortly explain the positions of these three parties that form the coalition in Germany, but I will also connect the discussion to their positioning in EU institutions, mainly the European Parliament and Council and the European Council, because this is mostly at the heart of my research. Then I will try to explain how the new German government won't have a radical impact on EU-Turkey relations, at least in the short run, while also trying to explain what might be the possible impact if things change in 2022 and 2023. And I would like to open the discussion to the overall perspective of Turkey relations in 2022, so that we have great colleagues in the room that we can discuss somewhat broader this striking issue. So if we start with the Social Democrats, because they have not only the highest vote percentage in the coalition, but they also hold the chancellery. And if we look at the German trajectory of foreign policy making, we should underline that the chancellery plays an important role in foreign policy making. It is surely not going to be as personalized as the relationship between Angela Merkel and President Erdogan, but we can still see the personal impact of Olaf Scholz, who is also a veteran politician who has served in the previous government as well. Right now, since we are still at the very early stages of the coalition, we can rely our analysis on party manifestos and coalition agreements. So my comments on the positions of these three coalition partners will basically rely on the party manifestos and what we have on the coalition agreement. Just I wanted to underline that. The Social Democrats use a quite vague and open-ended language when it comes to their comments on Turkey. It's rather short. And they state that the party will follow the developments in Turkey's domestic and foreign policy, and it's very much concerned with issues related to rule of law, human rights, and democratic norms, while they also state that they would like to keep the dialogue channels open. We will see this exact expression, or kind of a summary of it, also in the coalition agreement. So it's important to underline that even if this is rather brief remark regarding Turkey in their party manifesto, we will see that this will also have an important impact on the coalition agreement and the overall stance of the government when it comes to the relations with Turkey. If I combine this analysis with what we might expect from social democrats in the European Parliament and Council and the European Council, I think the thing gets a bit more interesting. Because first of all, 2022 will witness, once again, European Parliament voting a Turkey report. The report will be finalized in spring and then will be voted in the European Parliament. So it is important to observe how the German Social Democrats will act and what kind of amendments they will request in the European Parliament's Turkey report. When it comes to Council and the European Council, in case of important dossiers related to Turkey being on the table, because we have witnessed the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean dominating all the discussions in the European Council, but we don't know what will be on the table in 2022. Positive or negative, depending on what will be the topics, the position of German Social Democrats in these institutions will be very important as well. Why is that? With a German Social Democrat Chancellor, we are seeing that in general, the Social Democrat group in the European Council having a very privileged position and equalizing, almost surpassing the impact of the Christian Democrats in the European Council. So we should, following this, we should see more important stance related to democracy, rule of law, etc., at least in theory. Then in practice, this will all depend on the issues. If we move to Greens, this is a bit what I wanted to say about the Social Democrats. If we move to Greens, Greens had the most detailed manifesto when it comes to Turkey dossier. We have seen analysis in great length and very much detailed and clearly a strong mentioning of democracy, rule of law, clear references to political prisoners, clear references to channels of the need of channels of dialogue with the Kurdish part of the population, and a strong emphasis on the Kurdish issue as well. So this is clearly what we are also expecting the foreign minister to underline. No, this is that all these references to democracy, rule of law, basic rights and freedoms, minorities in Turkey, and basic rights for disadvantaged groups, etc., etc. We are expecting them to be more vocal since Germany has a green foreign minister from now on. When we look at another point of issue in the Green Manifesto, we are also seeing an important mention to Turkey's NATO membership. And this is clearly the common point between both the coalition partners, and this is also a common point for the overall tone of the coalition agreement, the Germany's desire to keep things right with the United States and with NATO. So when we look from the Turkish NATO perspective, we are seeing that Green Social Democrats and also the Liberals will rather try to care about the cohesion of NATO and approach Turkey as a NATO member as well. So this is important to underline for many people that expect a more rather tougher position from a green foreign minister towards Turkey. There is the side of the coin that cares more about democracy, rule of law, etc., etc. But there is also another side of the coin that cares Turkey to be a NATO member state. Then when we continue on the Green Manifesto, we also see a special session on EU-Turkey statement on refugees. Greens present opinions saying that they are rather finalize this agreement, go for a new migration agreement made between Turkey and the EU, design it rather focused on financial aid coming from the EU to Turkey, and logistical support for the integration of refugees. This position is already taken by the EU anyway. So once the financial aid from the previous statement has been finalized, the European Union already stated that it's not going to go for a package deal once again, but rather focus on financial aid and integration of refugees in Turkey. So this position of the German Greens is rather the position in the European Union as well. Migration is also an issue in French presidency's program right now. So we should observe some developments related to this in 2022, but the extent of it is still yet to see, because we have so many items in the French presidency. And as you can see, we have rather started the year dealing with Russia rather than Turkey. When we continue on the German Greens party manifesto, one important issue that made its way to coalition agreement is the situation of Turkish diaspora in Germany. Because the migration part did not only include the issue of refugees in Turkey, but also Turkish origins, Germans or to be Germans, Turkish origin residents of Germany had an important part in Green Manifesto. And what we have seen related to this is also reflected in the coalition agreement, and there are rather positive, I would say, but if Günter makes it to the panel, I'm sure he will comment more on this, that rather positive developments related to Turkish origin residents and citizens in Germany. If I sum up what they have been saying in the party manifesto and what was reflected in the coalition agreement, we have two clear dimensions. The first one being the dimension related to democracy, rule of law, basic rights and freedoms, and we should see more emphasis on that. The second one is both people-to-people contacts between Germany and Turkey, and the improvement of conditions of Turkish origins residents and citizens in Germany. So these remarks from the Green Manifesto made its way to the coalition agreement as well. And the last party, which I should also sum up, I'm kind of approaching to the end of my intervention, is the Liberal Democrats. I should underline that Social Democrats had said nothing about finalizing or continuing accession negotiations with Turkey. Greens said that we should continue accession negotiations with Turkey, and this is also their position inside the European Parliament, while the Liberal Democrats said very clearly it's time to end the accession negotiations with Turkey, because Turkey under Erdogan does not necessarily comply with the Copenhagen criteria, and they ask for a new framework and restructuring of the relations under this framework. While they were saying this, they also said that this new framework should be based on security and economy, and they were rather sharing this point with the Christian Democrats, since they don't necessarily govern right now. We're not focusing so much on their position, but this is not just the Liberals' position, but it's also the Christian Democrats' position inside Germany. And clearly, the Liberal Democrats also underlined Turkey's role as a NATO member state and an important neighbor to the EU and an indispensable partner for the EU. And they also underlined the importance of decreasing the tensions in the EU's neighborhood. I think this is, again, one common point that covers for all political parties and the EU stance in general. So if I sum up, we have these positions that are coming from three countries, three political parties. So we shouldn't expect, at least for now, any revitalization on Turkey's accession negotiations and its status as a candidate state. And we know the reasons why, but I'm happy to explore further if there are any questions. Second, we are expected to see further developments related to Turkish diaspora in Germany, which is very important also for bilateral relations. And we are ready to see more dialogue between Turkish and German civil societies. The structure and form is yet to be explored, but clearly that is there. And as I said, for 2022, we have the European Parliament's Turkey report to be discussed and voted in the European Parliament. We have all the dossiers related to Turkey to come to Council and the European Council. And of course, the Pandora's box would be opened if there are early elections. I don't want to speculate on that because this panel is not on that. But in that case, we will see other issues and stances that will be important for Germany and the European Union as well. So I think I will stop there. So I have used my 12 minutes wisely. And Günter is here, so happy to now fulfill the panel fully. And the floor is back to you, Alper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, it was very concise and well-structured presentation. Welcome, Günter. Günter is with us. My then question to Günter will be that, first of all, do you think will the new government be willing to open or close some chapters in accession talks between Turkey and the EU? And what will be would be the critical issues, do you think, critical issues of Turkey, EU, and Turkey German relations in the near future for this coalition government?
Yeah, thank you, Alper. And first, please apologize that I connected so lately. I have mixed up the different times between Turkey and Germany. And I was sure it started at 2 o'clock. And thanks, Ilke wrote me a message and I realized that I was about to miss. And now, naturally, I don't know what was said already until now. But regarding your question, there is naturally, but what means naturally, there is no sign that the new government would be ready or even consider to open new chapters or to close old chapters. This is a clear statement in the coalition agreement, and this is already a kind of improvement because, as you might know, the Liberal Democrats, one of the partners of the coalition, demanded originally the suspension or the breakup of accession talks, and therefore I think both the Greens and the Social Democrats have convinced the Liberals that this is not an option at the moment. And I think it's also a kind of a sign of realism that this would be needed to be a common European decision, and there would be no possibility of the European member states to agree on such a move. Maybe you go on with additional questions.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, I mean, what kind of issues could be the critical issues of Turkey-EU relations for this government? I mean, for instance, do you expect more cooperation on migration or climate change or energy security? Or can we expect that the new government will put more emphasis on some normative issues rather than transactional aspects of the relations?
Yeah, I think this is really the big question. We know that the Greens, both in their election program, but also in their statements, general statements on foreign policy, they put a lot of weight to a more value-based and normative foreign policy. But at the same time, there are other priorities of the Greens, for example, to arrive at a common stance in Europe, a more confrontative stance or a more decisive stance of Europe towards Russia. And there is also the aim of developing Europe's green economy and to transform not only Europe's energy, but also Europeans' mode of production to a more environmental friendly one. And these last two topics I mentioned, these require also cooperation, I think not only with EU member states, but also with neighboring states of the EU. And one of the greatest exporter to Europe is natural, the Turkish economy. And these are therefore two areas of cooperation or policy areas where cooperation of Turkey with Turkey is necessary, both security-wise when it comes to contain Russia, but also when it comes to the Green Deal. And therefore, I think the Greens have not yet really been able, and so I think the whole German government really to prioritize issues, which issues should be at the top and which issues should at the end of the day shape the EU-Turkey relations. We know that the Greens come from a societal spectrum that since long has been busy with Turkey, that knows Turkey very well in terms of not only of environmental policies, but also policies towards minorities, policies in regard to human rights, policies in regard to civil society. And the Greens have always been very consistent in these areas. But now it's the first time, I think, where the Greens at the same time face even enhanced challenges in regard to human rights, as we see the authoritarian turn in Turkish policies, but also responsibility in government, and the fact that completely normative policy towards Turkey could endanger other priorities of the Green government, of the German government, in which the Green play a particular strong role.
Yeah, a final question to you. I think it's fair to suggest that there is growing polarization between the Western liberal democracies and some autocracies, including China and Russia, and maybe this is our new kind of contemporary polarization. And I mean, Turkey is known to have not respect to some liberal values and human rights, as we all know. It goes just authoritarian more and more. So, I mean, where is Turkey situated in this polarization between democracies and autocracies by European elites? I mean, what kind of Turkish image do they have in this polarization, do you think?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an extremely important question. I would say that we are here facing a contradiction, because naturally, when it comes to institutions, then Turkey clearly belongs to the Western camp, as it's a member in NATO and still a country for membership in the European Union and a member of the Council of Europe. And also, when we look at a historical perspective, Turkey is clearly a member of the Western camp, because the history of the Republic of Turkey was one of Westernization, and therefore of adaptation to Western political institutions, to Western political models, and also to Western political values, and also Western economic models. On the other hand, we see political reality and the political rhetoric that situates Turkey more and more in the authoritarian camp. And one reflection of this is the fact, I think Ilke already mentioned it, that Turkey was not invited to the democracy summit of President Biden. And therefore, this, I think, is the real picture, a real contradictory one, where European elites still face, and since I think for a longer time, will face the challenge to deal with these contradictory images of Turkey, and also with these contradictory realities, because I think we also see that Turkey is in a way wavering when it comes to its foreign security policy, of both, on the one hand, challenging Western security partners when it comes to NATO. Let's think about the acquisition of the S-400 and closer cooperation with Russia, or let's think at the confrontative stance in the Eastern Mediterranean. And on the other hand, clinging to Western interests and to NATO political and security goals when it comes to Romania, when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to close security cooperation with Poland. And I think the years now to come will finally decide where Turkey is situating itself. And the question is how European and Western elites are going to deal with such a wavering Turkey, and how they will design strategies to ensure that in the long run, Turkey will remain in the Western camp. You are muted.
Yeah, thank you very much, Günter. So I want to turn then to Ebru at this moment. And I wanted you, Ebru, to sort of tell us how all these things are perceived in Turkey? I mean, what is the mood for Turkey-EU, for Turkey-German relations in this new era of the German politics?
Alper, many thanks for the question and also for the invitation and also for recommending our book, which I appreciate a lot. I think my points will be quite complementary to what Ilke and Günter have already mentioned. So I would like to look from the perspective of Ankara, okay, from the perspective of Turkish government. So the official perspective, what would be the expectations of Ankara from this new federal government, and what kind of factors are likely to shape the Turkish government's policies and approach towards Germany and the recently formed German federal government? I would like to argue that there are actually three mutually reinforcing, so they are also all independent or interdependent of each other, factors that are likely to shape Ankara's approach, stance towards the German federal government. The first one is, as what we have already to some extent mentioned, the degree of transactionalism in EU-German-Turkish relations. The second one will be the degree of politicization in bilateral relations, so in German-Turkish relations. And the third driver will be the processes of network governance in German-Turkish relations, so going beyond purely intergovernmental relations that include also horizontal modes of interaction between Germany and Turkey with the involvement of multi-level actors such as non-state actors, opposition parties, technocrats, etc. So I think these three factors will largely shape Ankara's policies and stance towards Berlin in general. So when we look at the degree of transactionalism, we have already said that throughout the Merkel era, particularly both in German-Turkish relations as well as in EU-Turkey relations, we have seen the degree of transactionalism gradually increasing, right? And what do we mean that, observed largely founded rather short-term exchanges between Germany and Turkey, or between moral norms, liberal democratic principles, and so forth. And it also brought along the weakening of the EU's conditionality, right? That links the adoption of EU's such as internal incentives, such as membership, or third countries' external mechanisms. So observed throughout the Merkel of the implementation of EU, and on the other hand, the gradual increase relations. But here I also mention wasn't a pattern or trend that started with Merkel specifically. Here we have to also mention actually Nicolas Sarkozy, the way actually he right in terms.
Ebru, sorry, your connection is on and off. Time to time we lose you. Maybe.
Okay, interesting.
Closing your video could be helpful.
Mine is sounds right.
Yeah, I just can't hear you anymore.
Actually, let's see. I will 1 second. I will try to reconnect or stop the video. As Günter mentioned, can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can hear you right now. Yeah, it's better.
It's better. Okay, so as
yeah,
we we observe gradual increasing transactionalism in the relations, and also the weakening of the normative conditionality vis-a-vis Turkey. And I have already said that this is actually not a trend that started with Angela Merkel. This we have to emphasize. It started actually with the French President Nicolas Sarkozy and his veto on 5 chapters of Turkey's EU accession talks in 2017 on completely personal grounds. So I hope that you can hear me right now. But as said, on the other hand, we have observed the increasing transactionalism, particularly from 2017 onwards, and this was due to the EU-Turkey refugee deal, because we all know that the refugee deal did not actually include any normative conditionality based on the Copenhagen political criteria. On the contrary, in return for Turkey's cooperation on the management of the refugee crisis, the deal offered Turkey and particularly Ankara a reward package, right? That included purely material incentives. And as we all know, Merkel acted alongside then Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu as one of the key architects of the deal. So she paved the way for the involvement of increased or enhanced transactionalism in EU-Germany-Turkey relations. And this transactionalism, and or what we could also call transactional conditionality, right, in EU-Turkey relations, has been further boosted actually by the 2020 and 21 European Council conclusions on the Eastern Mediterranean dispute, which and the conclusions were largely shaped, as we all know, by Germany and Chancellor Merkel, who played at that time the role of a mediator, right, between Turkey and some individual member states, so France, Cyprus, Greece, and so forth. Again, we have seen conclusions based on this mediation role, the inclusion of a transactional conditionality, right, which linked the possibility of a positive EU-Turkey agenda in strategic sectors such as trade, migration, etc., or public health, to material goals, meaning Turkey's contribution. Right. So here, I should also emphasize that this rising transactionalism in EU-Turkey and Germany-Turkey, particularly nurtured by Chancellor Merkel, provided Ankara, right, the Turkish government, and who preferred to refrain from adopting EU's central norms and values, with a very favorable as well as external, assume that undoubtedly expects the continuous and even
Ebru,
is it still very unstable?
Yeah, it's just goes and comes. It's unstable. Your network is seemingly to be unstable. What can I do at that time? I don't want to cut you as well. Okay, maybe
I could try to.
Yeah. By the way, I need to say that we will have the questions by audience as well. Please do feel free just to type your questions into chat box, or I can activate your mic if you want to just raise your questions
Alper, can you hear me now? And can you see me now?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Okay, I'm not relying on the Wi-Fi, so I'm relying on the hotspot completely, and I hope it will
Okay.
its job. So, but what I wanted to say is general, right? It provided Ankara, this transactionalism in German-Turkish and EU-Turkish relations, provided Ankara with a very favorable environment, both domestically as well as externally. So with regard to the new federal government, Ankara will definitely expect the continuous and if not even the growth or further evolution of the degree of transactionalism persisting in German-Turkish relations. So the question that arises is to what extent will the new German government continue to carry out Merkel's legacy of transactional foreign policy making vis-a-vis Turkey. In terms of the operationalization of the German foreign policy, foreign office by the Green Party, we may to some extent at least expect some shift towards norms, right, on the interest norms axis with regard to Turkey to some extent, to a limited extent. Here we already see the very weak and the initial signs, right, by the German foreign minister, signs regarding China, the Winter Olympic Games, the way she already emphasized that she is not gonna participate in it, and also the fragmentation, growing from fragmentation within the German federal government, particularly between Social Democrats and the Green Party regarding Russia and the Nord Stream 2. So there is, particularly within the German Foreign Office, a limited shift towards the normative, elements which could be founded on the norms interest axis. And we should also emphasize that there are three key ministries, right, which are right now inhabited by the Greens, which are actually also driven by, or which have been driven by transactionalism with regard to German-Turkish relations throughout the last decade. Foreign Affairs Ministry, Ministry of Economy, and also Environment. So we may expect some, at least limited degree of, integration of normative elements to transactional issues in these, issue areas, which will be operationalized by the members of the German Green Party. So in that sense, I, to some extent, expect, a shift towards more normative elements or integration of some normative elements into transactional relations, at least in these three policy areas. So foreign affairs, economy, and environment. So the second driver, from my point of view, of Turkish government's the formulation of Turkish government's position on Germany and German federal government will be the degree of politicization in German-Turkish relations. This is something we are not talking that much about, right? The issue of politicization in German-Turkish relations, because the relations are quite prone to politicization. What does politicization mean in politicized issue areas? Matters engage mass politics, right? That means political elite would open the debates to the attention of the wider public, be it the media, be it the public opinion, be it interest groups, social movements, and so on, through press statements, official speeches, in front of cameras, and so forth. So in politicized issue areas, wider public does not only become an observer to the matter, but also it contributes to the policy formulation as regards to this matter because of its ability to develop very precise policy preferences. And this is what we experienced in 2017 during another event we have actually participated in with Günter. We have already talked about the German Turkish relations throughout 2017, which was a super election year. And it involved both the constitutional amendment referendum in Turkey and also the general elections in Germany. And during this period, German-Turkish relations were quite prone to politicization, to mediatization, to manipulation by both German and Turkish politicians based on their quite populist discourses, right? And in that sense, we could also look towards 2022, 2023, and we may expect, in view of upcoming electoral cycles in Turkey, which will be further, which will be made further complex and more intricate in view of the evolving economic and political turmoil in Turkey. We could expect increased politicization in German-Turkish relations, because in view of the growing internal turmoil in Turkey, the political elite may look for external foes, external enemies, right? And which could also then involve increased mediatization, politicization of German-Turkish relations. And also, when we look at the very first driver, right, the degree of transactionalism, if there might be or there would be a weakening of the degree of transactionalism in German-Turkish relations, let's say, given that the Green Party and the Green Ministries would include some elements of, normative, sort of concerns into the transactional policy areas.
Ebru, sorry, can you sum up in 1 minute, please?
Of course, Ankara could also react to this through means of politicization. Okay, so in that sense, these are all mutually reinforcing drivers, I would say. And the third driver is, I would argue, the degree of network governance in German-Turkish relations. So the ability to go beyond purely intergovernmental relations that also include horizontal modes of interaction between Germany and Turkey with the involvement of multi-level actors, right, such as oppositional parties, non-state actors. So will the new German federal government go purely through official intergovernmental channels of communication with Turkey, or will the German government prefer to gradually increase its engagement with the opposition, with civil society, with a local expertocracy? Because Ankara will definitely prefer the hierarchical and central channels of intergovernmentalism. And when we look at the German coalition agreement, it kind of points to this enhanced interactions, right, based on network type of governance, because the coalition government states we will fill the EU-Turkey dialogue agenda with life and particularly expand exchanges with civil society and youth exchange programs. So this may, on the one hand, boost German-Turkish relations and Turkey's rapprochement with the EU, but it may also open up new avenues of politicization of relations, right? When Ankara expects, or if Ankara expects the communication channels to be purely intergovernmental, to be purely central, and on the one hand, on the other hand, if Berlin sort of, prefers opening up the communication channels to the wider multi-level sort of domain of German-Turkish relations, this may also create new avenues for politicization, particularly looking at the, politicized nature of German foundations, right, operating in Turkey, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, I think we will have a less consistent, German-Turkish dialogue compared with the Merkel era. There will be more tensions, more conflicts between Turkey and Berlin. And I also expect intragovernmental conflicts, meaning inconsistencies.
Okay, maybe Ebru, maybe we'll talk about these in the second round. We have already gone beyond our time.
Yes, that was my last sentence.
Sorry, but but Ilke will also leave us because she will be joining another meeting at just in 10 minutes time. So I would like to turn to Ilke. As you see here, we have some questions from Evangelos Areteos and Nilgün Arısan, Eralp, and actually they have the same question almost. They wonder what will be, do you think, the stance of the German government in the modernization of customs union between Turkey and EU? Will some normative issues such as protection of human rights be an important concern, for instance, for the German government? What do you think?
Thank you very much for the questions. The people that know me and know my work, they also know how obsessed I am with this framework discussion when it comes to Turkey-EU relations. So if you let me, I would like to use a couple of minutes to broaden a bit the question related to customs union modernization, because I think it's just a piece of the puzzle. Right now, when we are thinking and discussing the issues related to Turkey being a partner candidate state, then we have this concept that Ebru introduced, transactional conditionality, etc., etc. I think we are putting various frameworks in the same basket, because now we have Turkey as a candidate state. That comes with the accession framework. Turkey as a partner in economy and trade, that comes both from the association agreements due to the customs union, but also other foreign trade agreements signed in 20th century and other ad hoc arrangements. And then we have also Turkey as a partner and rival in foreign and security policy, which has been the main framework in 2019 and 2020 due to tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean. So we are seeing kind of the mixing and blurring of these different frameworks when we are talking about Turkey-EU relations as such. So what I expect and what I also encourage in some forthcoming publications that I'm very happy to share in January, February, that we start talking about the new framework, whatever that is. I have a couple of suggestions for that, but I know that it's not all shared by all the colleagues working on Turkey relations in a broader sense. Because even if there's a government change in Turkey, or even if there's an attitude change in the current government in Turkey, which is very much unlikely, as we all know, the problems that are existing in Turkey relations and the problems that arise because of these multiple frameworks will stood up again. And we also know the issues related to enlargement policy, the situation with Western Balkans, and the overall conditionality of the European Union as a normative power, not only in enlargement countries, but also in Eastern Partnership countries. So there's a really big, broad debate here that I don't want to extend so much, so that you are not I would like to pass the floor to other colleagues in the meeting. But I think we should, as analysts, broaden up the question on the new framework, broaden up the question on the modernization of the customs union, because what we really need right now is the modernization of the entire Turkey-EU relations in a broader sense, and to find, if it's possible, democratic framework, or a framework that has democratic elements as conditionality in it. Because one more sentence, customs union has witnessed the very much shifting conditionalities. No, it has first democracy, rule of law, basic rights and freedoms as conditionalities to start for the modernization. Then we are seeing it again in EU-Turkey statement on refugees based on good cooperation on management of irregular migration. And then lastly, we also see conditionality over decreasing the tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean and good neighborly relations with Greece and Cyprus. So the customs union already witnessed 3 blocks of conditionalities, which shows us that the European Union is trying to use it as a bargaining chip. But what we should encourage from now on in 2022 and 3 is a broader approach to these frameworks between Turkey and the European Union, and harmonization of them, and coming up with the new framework right now in parallel to the accession framework, because we are not ready to let it go until we build one new one. but work on a broader framework. So that's going to be my final contribution to this panel. Thank you very much once again for the invitation, and very much looking forward to future exchanges with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilke. I would like to thank you also to accept my, as you accepted my invitation and join the panel with very concise and solid arguments. Thank you for that, and hope to see you again. Thank you. Günter, maybe I can ask the same questions also, I mean, to you, or just a bit slightly different version of it. So do you expect more progress in Turkey-EU relations regarding the modernization of the customs union agreement? Because actually this modernization will be in the favor of both sides, it seems, but there are certainly some criteria that should Turkey implement. And what do you think given this economic difficulties that Turkey is currently experiencing, will this economic crisis in a way boost these efforts for modernization of the customs union, or will it badly inflict? How do you see the prospect for that?
Thank you, Alper, for the questions, and thank you also. Really thanks to both to Ebru and to Ilke. I could not agree more with what Ilke said, because we have been in a way part of those who tried to move the framework for the customs union from the domestic issues to foreign policy issues. And I would, it's such a pity that Ilke has to leave, because I would be very interesting in her elaborations what she meant with a framework that includes more more democratic elements. I would be very much interested in it, and I think we will discuss it further. I think for my personal opinion is when it comes to the future of Turkish relations, that there is no, or there is little probability that Europe moves back to discuss the question of entering into negotiations on the deepening and modernization of the customs union to relate this to democratic standards, because this would be a rehearsal of policies. It would be a reorientation towards earlier stances, and it would be a reorientation towards a power relation shift between Europe and Turkey, in which Europe not only pretended but thought it would be able to shape and to not to shape Turkish policies, yes, to shape Turkish policy and to influence Turkish policies, and that to a time where Europe thought or had real trust into its power and into conditionality. And I think this has gone. This time has gone. And that today we are not longer able to speak of a real power hierarchy between Turkey and Europe, but that Turkey and Europe meet each other in regard to power relations almost at equal footing, and Turkey is able to exert pressure on Europe almost to the same degree as Europe is able to exert pressure on Turkey. And in such changing power relationships, I don't see any possibility of going back to these old forms of conditionality. And but this is the general remark. And to the question of Evangelos, therefore, I think there might be a lot of willingness in the Greens and also in the overall German government, because also the Social Democrats have naturally a lot of normative concerns. But I think when we are looking at the overall picture in Europe, where it was difficult enough, and Ebru referred to this, to form a common opinion in the conclusions of the European Council, and therefore, namely to at least to put forward some foreign policy related conditionality for Turkey. This was extremely difficult, as we know, with Greece for being against any talk about the opening of the customs union, and France and other countries which would have been eager not to put any conditionality. Therefore, I think there is no possibility to go back to these old position. My personal opinion when it comes to future Turkey relations, I more see a tendency likely to deal with Turkey in different policy areas differently. And that means to talk economics at the one hand side, to talk security cooperation on the other hand side, to talk migration issues as a third topic, and to talk European relations, Turkish-European relations as a fourth issue, but not to relate them as close as they had been related today, because what Ilke said, that these different frameworks, these different processes, membership process, cooperation, containment, have overlapped each other, and at the end of the day have not enabled both Turkey and Europe to improve their relations, and have also not contributed in the last 10 to 15 years to betterment of the domestic situation in Turkey. And therefore, a critical review of this period shows us that we have, in my opinion, that if we want to move forward, we have to separate these different policy areas and look for improvement at different areas of cooperation, not totally, but more independent from each other as before. And this naturally would point exactly to what Ebru has named transactional policy. And I think it was really quite correct that Ebru not only shared with us her, I think, clearly that she clearly favors a more rules-based, a more norms-based relationship, and that she sees a tendency towards transactionalism as nothing to be desired, but at the same time that she openly expressed also that a normative approach could also worsening, could also create new stumbling blocks, like the example of enhanced politicization, mediatization, and that a normative approach could also endanger or could create new crises in European Turkish relations. And on the other hand, I think it's not far-fetched to say that the most prominent example of transactionalist policies, namely the migration deal, which can be criticized on a lot of points, in a way maybe ensured the continuation of Turkey's close relation with Europe, without given the tremendous authoritarian turn in the in Turkey, given a new rhetoric in Turkish policy that situates Turkey more in an anti-Western camp, maybe without the very concrete transactional dimensions of relations, namely economy and migration, European Turkey relations would have been much more deteriorated as we see it today. And therefore we are in a way confronted with this kind of absurdity or paradox situation by which we are in a way acting transactional, but through transactional action are at least ensuring that a particular degree of coordination and of cooperation between Europe and Turkey continues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Günter, for this very clear but time to time pessimistic answers, actually. I would like to turn to Ebru. I had to interrupt her as we don't have too much time for İlke. So Ebru, I think you have already seen Didem's question. She wants you to elaborate more on the relationship between transactionalism and politicization. And I would like to also ask you, you know, we are discussing with you the Ankara's standpoint on the relations with the Western countries. So we know that from Gezi demonstrations on, Turkish foreign policy elite began to adopt more anti-Westernist foreign policy discourse. Almost all important issues are in a way rolled within a Western conspiracy discourse. So we have a quite anti-Westernism triggered by some also, you know, crisis, such as the Eastern Mediterranean or devaluation of Turkish lira, so on and so forth. So do you expect more anti-Westernist foreign policy rhetoric from the Turkish elite, you know, in 2022 and maybe 2023, or will certainly this kind of economic difficulties or other social unrests direct government to be more sort of moderate or to be more conciliatory towards the EU? What do you think about that?
Thank you very much, Alper. I hope that my internet connection is still stable, because sometimes I also see some signals saying that it's unstable, which is interesting because I'm trying all the different connections, right? So even the hotspot, but I hope that you can hear me. I will connect actually Alper's question also with Didem's question, because I think they are both interconnected and also connected with Günter's remarks, which I also found very helpful and informative. So in terms of transactionalism, what is the relationship between transactionalism and politicization? Didem, I think this is an interesting question, because I think there is no one answer. As we all know, normally transactionalism may actually decrease politicization, right? As we all know, issue-specific, sectoral, technical, operational cooperation. But if there will be elements included to this transactional sphere domain, such as environment, such as energy, such as economy, and all these, and to some extent even foreign affairs, right? Foreign office, all these offices which are right now operated by green ministries, which have a much more normative stance towards policy making, then we could actually experience and observe, and I would say we would most likely observe an increased politicization of German-Turkish relations in these issue areas. Because at the end of the day, the main game or goal of each politician is to stay at the office, right? Particularly given the Greens did not get the opportunity for quite a lot of time, quite a long time, they will try to stay in office also for the next terms, meaning they need to satisfy their voter base, meaning that they also need to definitely include some normative elements to this transactional policy making towards Turkey, even in issue areas or policy areas which have been dealt purely technical and transactional for the last couple of years, except the customs union modernization, right? That issue is politicized for sure, but the other issue areas such as economy, energy, etc. So I would argue that given all these transactional and particularly for Turkey of strategic importance, sort of providing ministries are operated by the Green members, of the government, I would argue that we will experience more inconsistency, we will experience more politicization, we will experience more the integration of more normative elements to these transactional domains. And this will be something new for Turkey to experience, for Ankara, because Ankara really enjoyed, I would argue, this favorable environment of transactionalism provided by the Merkel government, particularly from 2016 onwards. And I would argue this will gradually, slowly change. Not maybe in the next couple of weeks, but in the upcoming months, after also the ministries, the new ministers have sort of get accustomed with their position and with their responsibilities, etc. And another interesting thing is, I think, what we experienced also moving forward, but also looking backward with regard to the refugee deal, right? We said it was quite transactional, was based on a transactional conditionality. And as Günter mentioned, it also provided kind of like a skeleton for EU-Turkey relations, right? For the last couple of years. But we shouldn't also forget that it also provided actually Ankara, due to the asymmetrical interdependency in this issue area, in this migration issue area, with a quite greater leeway in terms of negotiations, in terms of leverage vis-a-vis the EU, and it also led to politicization of the migration issue by Ankara. So sometimes, if there is also an asymmetrical interdependence in favor of the third country, meaning Turkey, this third country could even politicize the issue area, even at times when the relationship is driven by transactionalism. So I think this is something we shouldn't forget. Transactionalism does not, or functionalism does not necessarily lead to depolitization. It really depends also on the power constellation. And in terms of migration issue, there is a asymmetrical interdependence, what we call in our upcoming articles reverse interdependence, in favor of Turkey. And this puts the deal and such transactional collaborations on such a thin ice, right? Also for the EU. It is to some extent a successful framing or collaboration, but on the other hand, it also lays on a very thin ice, particularly for the EU. And it provides domestically also Ankara with a very favorable environment at the end of the day. And in terms of compartmentalization, Günter, you are right. I mean, it's a very complex topic, right? I mean, all these different conditionalities, all these different framings, how to bring them together. If we cannot bring them together, we should separate them. In that sense, you are to some extent right. But on the other hand, if we need to compartmentalize everything to move forward, in order just to create a functional, transactional, and sort of on a thin ice, and a collaboration which lies on thin ice. Do we want to move forward this way? Do we want to move forward purely transactional, just in order to maintain intergovernmental communication channels? Is this something which is favorable for the EU, which is favorable for Turkish domestic constituency? I think this is something we should also, from a normative and ethical and moral point of view, take into stand. I mean, do we need to want to be, and do we need to be purely transactional just for the sake of moving forward? And what do we mean really by moving forward? I think this is something, I mean, this is not something I ask you, but this is also something I ask myself, right, as a scholar, and also to the audience. What does moving forward or standing by mean, right? Really mean? And what is our responsibility in that context? I think this is something we should really take into account. And in terms of maybe one word towards in terms of politicization. We have forgotten one driver or actor of, that could drive politicization of German-Turkish relations in the coming months and years, and this is the Christian Democratic Union. They will be in the opposition for the first time after many, many years, and being traditionally Turkish skeptic due to various reasons. This will pave them with greater leeway for an opportunity for politicizing German-Turkish relations, in order also to make them prepare for the upcoming elections, right? In order to win new voter base. And the 2022 or 2023, whenever it may come, Turkish elections will also provide the Christian Democratic Union and the CSU with a favorable environment for politicizing German-Turkish relations. And this will have also, I would say, quite negative implications for German-Turkish sectoral cooperation in general, because it will increase the attention of the German public opinion, right, to German-Turkish cooperation. And this could also constrain the preferences of German ministers, particularly the green ones, working in issue-specific policy areas which are of transactional nature, such as energy, environment, and so forth, I will say. And Günter is shaking his head as no, in terms of no, so I'm looking forward to discussion with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ebru. Günter, do you have some final words to add to these?
Yes, Ebru invited me to these final words. I think first we should remember two things. In the last election for the German parliament, Turkey played absolutely no role. And this is quite different to the last election, where when Turkey's EU accession was really in the center of the debate. And at that time, naturally, not naturally, but at that time, really, the Christian Democrats came forward with a harsher position on Turkey and forced the, at that time, Social Democrat candidate also to promise or to announce that he would be work for the suspension of the membership talks. But let us not forget, the aim of the Christian Democrats was to obstruct Turkish membership, but not to obstruct transactional cooperation. And therefore, I don't see a big probability or a big challenge from parts of the CDU to politicize Turkish EU relation and Turkey EU cooperation in the terms of security, in the realms of security, migration and economy. I don't see it. It's a different thing to oppose Turkey's membership in the EU and in the EU-Turkish decision, in the EU's decision-making processes, and to argue for close cooperation with Turkey. That's completely different things. And second, I think also if there is an issue regarding to migration and, let's say, to the other today in German's domestic policy, it's the migration influx of 2016 and not longer the Turkish community in Germany. The Turkish community, despite or beyond all really still existing problematic areas and issues of integration or assimilation, you name it, is today really in the background and in the forefront is how to deal with migrants, how to deal with future migrants, how to integrate 1 million migrants from Syria, and therefore the Turkish minority is not in the forefront anymore. This might change in the case of early elections in Turkey, and when the government again tries to campaign in European member countries and in a way for the sake of winning voters engage into a kind of othering debate of the Germans, of the Europeans, of the Christians, of the West. Then we will see it again, but this is completely up to the Turkish government. The German domestic atmosphere is different, and I think it's even, despite the fact that we have a much higher number and percentage of Turks than, for example, France, I think the Turkish question in France is today much more in the forefront as in Germany, and therefore in these issues I disagree with Ebru. And naturally, Ebru rightly asked, do we want to move forward in disregarding any political and any ethical aim? And naturally, we don't want. But the question is if circumstances are forcing us into such a direction. And here I can only refer which what I have already mentioned, that the German government, and I think the German policy as such, has not made up its list of priorities in which in regard to Turkey-German relations. How important and how central for Europe is the domestic situation in Turkey, and how central for Europe is Turkey's cooperation in regard to the Green Deal, Turkish security cooperation. These discussions, different discussions on Turkey, have not necessarily or have not enough to a sufficient degree linked to each other, and there is no clear prioritization. And this has to be done in the coming years or in this year. And then I think we can decide. We will see how policies in Germany towards Turkey develop. But again, what I also have said before, Germany is a big country in Europe, but it's not the only country in Europe. And policies towards Turkey have to be in unanimity and have to be common policies. And I think there is no, despite France at the moment, due to the competition between the party of Macron with two extreme right-wing parties, and where it's much more probable that Turkey will be in the center of the debate. But with the exception of France at this moment, I think there is no other country in Europe in which the public opinion is as informed about Turkey and is as critical about the Turkish government. And therefore, I think I would fully agree with Ebru that in this climate, the government is under a particular pressure to introduce normative aspects in its policy, but only to a particular degree. And at the end of the day, economic and security interests will prevail.
Yeah, thank you very much, Günter, and for these projections. Your emphasis on the French election is quite important, I think, and also your point that we have to a bit isolate issues while trying to understand the course of Turkey-EU/Turkey-German relations, which you had mentioned in the previous round. Ebru, do you have final words just before concluding the session?
Maybe just briefly. I mean, I agree with Günter to some extent, but I also would like to emphasize again and again the electoral cycle, right? The electoral cycle is, according to various academic, publications and also empirical evidence at hand, the most important driver of politicization of any kind and in any country and in any EU institution. In that sense, while the Turkish issue or the issue of Turkey has not been politicized or mediatized during the 2021 federal elections in Germany, and there are a few different reasons for that, right? The first reason was until the very end of the election campaign, it was not really certain who was going to win the elections. And in that sense, particularly the center left and center right refrained from politicizing any issue area which could actually also trigger, their losing of some voters, towards extreme right. In that sense, the issue of Turkey was not really on the table of the electoral campaigns, and also in terms of, also in view of the fact that, the COVID pandemic and the internal challenges of Germany and the German domestic constituency have also caused the depolitization of Turkey in the electoral campaigns in 2021. But Turkey is a different picture, right? 2022, 2023, or whenever they may take place. This will be held under a completely different atmosphere compared with the German domestic political landscape. And in that sense, I will definitely expect the politicization of Europe, the politicization of German-Turkish relations. This is also related to the question you asked, Alper, right? To what extent will the Turkish political elite rely on, populist discourses, which would also portray, to some extent, Europe as foe or enemy, etc., etc. In view of the domestic constraints and limitations, external elements could definitely be integrated into the Turkish political campaigns or electoral campaigns. And I think if the German-Turkish relations become politicized during the Turkish political campaigns or electoral campaigns, this will have also, boomerang effect for the German media, for the German domestic constituency, which will also increasingly report on these issues, right? And we will have there also a reciprocal relationship, I would say, and we will also see the politicization of German-Turkish relations in 2022, 2023, not only in Turkey, but because of the politicization in Turkey, that this will also trigger a politicization of and mediatization of the issue also in Europe and in Germany particularly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ebru. Actually, it seems that 2022 will be a tough year for Turkey-EU relations as well. I mean, personally, I'm among those who do not expect the transformation of the relations for the better as long as this government in Turkey remains in power. So I don't expect radical recalibrations, and not to have any further crisis will be satisfying for me, at least until 2023. I would like to just conclude the session here. I would like to thank to all panelists for their invaluable and inspiring ideas. Thank you for joining. It was quite inspiring panel, actually. So, hopefully we'll see you in the next or future events. Thank you for joining. I would also like to thank the audience with their questions and joining. It was quite valuable. This was a panel organized under the framework of Monnet Chair on security, migration, and society in Europe. So, goodbye to everyone.
Thank you very much, Alper. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
week.
See you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.